With the exception of only a couple gripes I had with it, Samus Returns was fucking great. It took all the elements of past 2D Metroid titles and updated the formula and mechanics just slightly to make it more accessible, all while not only not lowering the overall difficulty, but raising it quite a bit. I don't want to spoil anything, so as always, I'm gonna just talk the game up and tell you why I like it, while staying as vague as I can. To call Metroid Samus Returns a remake would be entirely selling this game short. It takes the same goal and concept of hunting down the Metroids on planet SR388, but completely revamps it. This is in no way a remake, and if anything, I'd call it a reimagining. This really is a brand new game all of its own, and not only was the difficulty increased, but the map is fucking massive compared to previous titles. There's quite a few boss battles too that are all pretty goddamn hard. Luckily though, new to this game are checkpoints. While previous Metroid games would send you back to the last save point you reached upon death, this one brings you back to a few different locations depending on where you were last before you died. It'll either warp you back to a save point or a number of checkpoints, most of which are elevator rooms if you happen to use an elevator. But the most useful are the checkpoints before bosses, which I wasn't expecting at all, and this game's bosses are no fucking joke, so while I'd normally say this would dumb the difficulty down, a lot of those bosses are hard enough to where I'd consider it a welcome handicap. Just like all the other 2D Metroid games, it's an immersive and addictive game formula that's never let me down before and hasn't yet again. For those of you who've been subscribed to me for a while, you probably know that I like linearity in games and I don't really like exploration or open worlds or anything like that. I don't necessarily want my hand held, but I do want a clear goal and a path with only the obstacles that are in front of me to overcome. And I don't know what it is about this series in particular, but Metroid has always been different for me. It's the one game with pretty heavy exploration that I can just not put down. I think maybe it's the desire for new abilities and how they constantly give me a sense of progression. Like, no matter how expansive the world is and how lost I feel I might be, I always feel like I'm getting somewhere. As always, the music is ominous and lonely, and the planet you're exploring manages to both feel alive, yet somehow simultaneously barren. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure how much I can really do to describe the game that hasn't already been said. I mean, they didn't exactly break new ground or do anything wildly different than previous games, but they did update it with new mechanics to freshen up the formula just a bit. And at the end of the day, that's pretty much all I ever really want from a sequel. Look, if you're a 2D Metroid fan, you will like this game, period. But, like I said in the beginning of the video, I do have a couple gripes. This first one's a personal preference more than anything, but God, do I fucking hate the 2.5D aesthetic. I don't think I've ever once played a 2.5D platformer that I thought wouldn't have looked better with just a straight-up 2D art style. I will say, though, that despite the fact that I hate the aesthetic as a whole across pretty much all games, this one did manage to pull it off pretty well. The game does look really good despite being on the 3DS, and I think that they did a really good job, all things considered. And a lot of that boils down to color choice and usage, which I think they nailed. The other issue I have, and it's a glaring one, are the controls, which I have a few problems with. First and foremost, you can't use the D-pad to control movement at all. One of the new mechanics is the ability to free aim wherever you want with complete 360-degree movement. And trust me, it's a very welcome addition. But I think it's because of that mechanic itself that they completely took away the ability to control Samus with the D-pad. And 2D platforming with analog controls has never been and never will be ideal. And please don't comment some bullshit down there saying like, oh, I didn't have a problem with it. It doesn't matter that you didn't have a problem with it. It's objectively worse. Analog controls have travel, which means it's gonna take longer for you to input shit into the game, okay? So just, it is worse. Like, objectively, it's worse. I'm not saying the circle pad controls were the worst thing ever, but a D-pad would have been better, especially considering that Samus's movement in this game is not influenced by analog controls. You walk at one speed. And there's a lot of precise inputs and movement that the game expects of me, especially quickly going in and out of the morph ball, that I had such a hard time pulling off and I truly believe was being held back by the mandatory use of the circle pad. I understand that they needed use of the circle pad for free aiming, but they could have just as easily also implemented 8-direction aiming with the D-pad and let you choose accordingly. My other problem seems minor at first, but really made the game harder for me to play. The game has a melee counterattack, which is once again a great addition to the formula that really changes things up, but while jump and fire are mapped to the B and Y buttons, melee is mapped to X. which is above the B and Y buttons. This may not seem like a big deal, and it may seem like I'm nitpicking, but when playing a game that's controls require you to rest your thumb over jump and fire, it's a really far distance for your thumb to travel to hit that X button. And normally this wouldn't be too much of an issue, but it's a counterattack that's mapped to that button. It's timing based. I never once got used to it, and I often found myself messing up the timing of the counterattack. I did get better at it, but it never fully felt comfortable. And once again, I know a lot of you that are watching this are probably gonna say you didn't have a problem with it, but that's not the point. All of this could have been eliminated if they had just given us a controller mapping option, which is not a difficult thing and is in a lot of games. For example, anytime I ever play Mega Man X, I always map dash to the R button. You know why? So I can dash, jump, and fire all at the same time without claw-handing the fucking controller. Despite these couple stupid issues I had though, Samus Returns is a brilliant game that I believe not only can be enjoyed by old fans of the series, but new players as well. It's a great entry and totally 100% lives up to the gold standard of 2D Metroid titles. Go buy it. Like now. Let's close this out and go to the store and buy it, or do that digital shit everyone's doing now.